him, her was two highlights.
That's what I'm saying, two highlights.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Ready?
Yes.
Okay. This meeting will be recorded. The Zoom application will notify you that this meeting is being recorded. Please press continue on the Zoom application to stay in the meeting. Use the raise hand feature in Zoom when you would like to speak on an item and also to lower your hand when you are finished speaking. Please unmute when called to speak and mute yourself when you are done speaking. If you're calling by phone, identify yourself by name before speaking on an item. Press *9 on your phone to raise and lower your hand. Press *6 if you're participating by phone to mute and unmute. Okay, I would like to call this meeting of the Governance and Ethics Committee meeting on Friday, January 16th at 10:10 a.m. We're meeting in the Sparacino Conference room. We have, I guess I would like to ask for roll call.
Chair Jane. Councilmember Park.
Here.
Councilmember Shahal.
Yes.
Okay, now we don't have anything on consent, so we're going to move on to public presentations. So any person who would like to address this body on a matter not on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the body. The law does not permit action or extended discussion of any item not on the agenda except under special circumstances. Are there anyone who would like to make a public presentation?
I have one. Dr. Shanks, if you'll unmute yourself, you should be able to speak now.
Yes, can you hear me? Okay, good morning. I'm Dr. Tom Shanks. Let me turn off my phone here. Okay, I'm actually not sure whether this is public presentation or speaking to your agenda, but your agenda packet is so confusing that even I, who created these programs and advised them for 17 years, cannot tell what you're proposing to do. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. All right, section 1 is labeled proposed edits to the city's code of ethics and values, but the city's code is the 2001 code. This section contains a replacement document, not edits to the city's code. Section 2 is labeled LCW's proposed city code of ethics and values. This appears to be what you presented in March. So is section 1 the edited version of section 2? Are you voting on section 1 or section 2? Which one is the actual proposal? Section 3 is labeled proposed edits to behavioral standards, but it just includes the original behavioral standards document. Section 4 is labeled LCW's proposed behavioral standards, but it contains the ethics website pages, a yellow note saying no recommended edits until after others are approved, original commissioner standards, original council standards, the original code again, and the 2006 calendar insert. I can't tell from the packet, are you voting on 1 or 2 for the code, what you're doing with behavioral standards, whether you're eliminating, editing, or keeping them, what no recommended edits means, why the same documents are repeated multiple times, and what you're actually voting on. And if I can't understand this, how can residents? The Brown Act requires materials that are organized for meaningful public review. This packet fails that test. I request immediate continuance until you provide clarification, sections 1 or 2, what you're voting on, proper side-by-side comparisons, accurate labels, explanation of cryptic notes, and a 60-day review period. Why is there no public input into this whole process? Why is it now suddenly being rushed after being delayed for such a long time? And why is it so confusing? I created these programs. I can't understand your packet. So that's either incompetence or deliberate obstruction, or I'm an idiot, which I don't think is the case. So which is it? Because either way, you can't vote on documents the public can't comprehend. Thank you.
Okay, that was actually related to item number 2 and should have been taken during item number 2, but I entertained that presentation. Now, are there any other public speakers?
No.
Okay, so we'll move on to general business. Item number 1 is approval of the October 30th, 2025 Governance and Ethics Committee special meeting minutes. Is there any discussion? Any questions? Is there any member of the public that would like to speak on this item? Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion.
Motion to approve. Item number 2. What?
A motion by Chahal.
A second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Okay, passes unanimously. Now we can move on to item number 2, which is presentation by outside consultant for the review and recommendations regarding potential adoption of Ethics Commission and the approval of proposed changes to city's ethics policies previously presented to the committee. We have staff presentation. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. My name is Maureen Jacob. I'm the managing partner in the San Francisco office at Liebert Cassidy Whitmore, which is the law firm that works with the city of Santa Clara. I am here today to follow up on some policy updates that we discussed at the last meeting that I appeared at. Secondarily, and really the focus of my conversation with you today is on the potential adoption of an ethics commission. My suggestion with respect to the other policies that we previously discussed, until the committee is clear on whether or not it wants to move forward with proposing an ethics commission to the city council, I don't think those other documents would be ready to be finally approved until we get some clarity on that. So what you have been provided this morning, I understand, are the red line versions of those other policies that we discussed when I was here in 2025. And so you have those for review. Again, what I'm focusing on this morning, and I'm available here today until noon, is the potential adoption of an ethics commission. Sorry, I'm not. Oh, this
one is an older laptop.
What do I need to press? Right
Here.
there? Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Shoot.
So first thing that I want to chat with the committee about are general considerations, with respect to whether or not to adopt an ethics commission. What I've done is evaluated ethics commissions that currently exist throughout the state of California. And then I also looked outside of California to see what other major cities in the country are doing. Now, ethics commissions can vary somewhat in their structure and what authority they have, but in large part, they are similar in the sense that They all tend to have, some sort of investigative authority, advisory opinion authority, and some have binding authority, over their agencies. And so we will talk about various examples. And my hope is that the information that I provide you with today will help inform a discussion that you can have about whether the city of Santa Clara is interested in moving forward with potentially adopting its own ethics commission. And I also have, which we can use for our discussion, is kind of a list of, questions that you should be thinking about and asking yourselves as we go through this. I apologize. I hit that. It's okay. This one, right? Okay. Yes. Okay, so focusing on cities in California. So I reviewed San Francisco, the city and county of San Francisco has its own ethics commission, which was created by charter. And they have enforcement authority over ethics rules and policies, campaign finance rules and laws and policies, and lobbying laws. And I'll do a deeper dive on each of these as we go through the presentation. This is just kind of an overview of what I'm going to talk about. City of Oakland, another Bay Area entity, also has an ethics commission that has authority over issues involving ethics, transparency, and campaign reform. City of Sacramento, another Northern California agency, has a commission that's complaint driven. So when complaints are brought forward, there's authority there to investigate and propose action. And then they also have an enforcement authority over their local ethics codes and campaign finance policies. And then in Southern California, both City of San Diego and City of Los Angeles have ethics commissions. In San Diego, it is quite resourced and structured. They've got an independent department with their commissioners and staff that enforces local ethics and campaign laws and conducts audits and investigations. And we'll talk a little bit about how that works at these agencies. There are major cities outside of California that also have some sort of ethics body. One thing I want to point out, City of Boston is listed here. So they have a board of ethics, but it's actually a state department. It is not a city department. So the state there is enforcing and investigating ethics issues, but these other cities identified here are all city-based ethics commissions with authority. Again, it's generally over campaign finance issues, lobbying issues, alleged ethics misconduct by either public officials and or staff. Now, there's a lot of leeway that the city of Santa Clara has in considering what type of commission, if any, you end up adopting. So, for example, you can have a commission that's purely advisory in nature. It could be set up so that they would be advising this body. It could be set up where they're advising the city council in full. So it does not have to be a binding entity, and you have a lot of freedom and flexibility in terms of how to set that up in a way that works for the city. All of the commissions that I surveyed have investigative authority, meaning the ability to conduct investigations. And that's either being done in-house by staff or they are being sourced out to investigators to do that work. I'm not seeing agencies where the commissioners themselves are doing those investigations, but the findings of those investigations come back to the commissioners. And all of the identified commissions have at least the authority to make an advisory opinion to the legislative body. Some of the ethics committees, and I'll just in a blanket way refer to them as ethics committees, they have enforcement powers, such as sanctioning offenders, fining offenders. Not all of them do, but some of them do. Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, and Miami, for example. So those are commissions that are more independent, function more independently from the actual city council. Also, you've got some scenarios where commissions were established by vote of the public as opposed to by the city councils. Yeah. So where you see the public voting an ethics commission and you see more independence. So right now, City of Santa Clara has, a lot of freedom, again, and leeway in terms of how you want to set this up if it's the council that's actually doing that. Some of the ethics commissions, have that campaign finance oversight. I think that you're seeing that sort of emphasis in these larger entities, where that may be a bigger issue. And conflict of interest laws, ethics laws, and policies are reviewed and enforced by all of the ethics commissions that I took a look at. My understanding of this committee is that this committee reviews city policies at this point. And so another thing to take into consideration for this body, if you make a recommendation to the council to adopt an ethics commission, is how will the two bodies function together? Because you've got this ethics and governance committee, and if you add an ethics commission, there's going to need to be a clear delineation over what your powers and authorities and your roles are. Okay, so focusing on San Francisco's ethics commission
Can I
yes.
ask a question?
Yes.
What was the smallest city that you found?
So I think it's, let me just list.
That was my question as well. What are
Yeah.
Some jurisdictions that you presented closest in size to Santa Clara.
I didn't specifically look at that, but looking at it, I would assume Oakland would be the closest in size, but could be Sacramento. I did not look at that specific question. And I'm happy to follow up with that. And when you're saying closest, you mean population wise of?
Population and budget.
Budget, population.
Okay, I did not look at that. And
Administrative point of view, because depending upon the size of city, they have a manpower to manage some of these things. But
right.
what about city of Santa Clara, whether they have
Right.
capability to manage that? Yeah.
Excellent point in question, and something that I was thinking about. You have City of New York, for example, which we'll talk about, which has a lot of resources, city resources devoted to their ethics commission, which includes standalone departments that help the ethics commission do their work, but their resources are not the resources of City of Santa Clara. So that's a fair point. I did not look at that specifically yet, but can.
I think Councilmember Chahal.
Yeah.
Can I, maybe I can hold it if you
Sure.
refer to that. Like some of these things we are talking about, campaign finance, conflict of interest, and other things, they are managed by FPPC right now at a state level, just like Boston has a
Yes.
state level. So what would, you can answer later on, we
Sure.
can go through it, but my question is, what difference would it make from administrative point of view to have a separate ethics or campaign finance commission, whichever you want to call it, versus following FPPC? That's my
Great question. Happy to address it now. So it is.
I had a similar question,
Mhm.
which is we have the grand jury, we have the FPPC, and we have the city. Where is the delineation between roles there? How would you see that we would be doing something that's not covered by grand jury or not covered by FPPC.
Okay. So when you're dealing with a body like FPPC or a grand jury, those are separate entities from the city of Santa Clara, right? So we start from there. So they have your local grand jury and the FPPC have their own missions, charges, roles, and responsibilities. And, for example, with the FPPC and a grand jury, their own investigative authority. And so if the city of Santa Clara has an interest in having its own system set up to handle those things, for any reason, then that's an opportunity to do that through a commission. Without having looked, I have not in advance of this meeting looked specifically at what the jurisdiction of the FPPC is, but you could set up your commission so that you're not overlapping with the FPPC. Alternatively, it could overlap and you would just have your own process, which gives the city of Santa Clara just some control and information. Because the FPPC and the grand jury, they're not working for the city. And so their interests are different. They're not necessarily aligned with the cities. So you could have overlap in duties, or you could decide to not do those things, not have your ethics commission handle anything that would be covered by the FPPC, for example. And the grand jury, they're more broad. A grand jury can investigate, presumably investigate all sorts of things, right? That come before a grand jury. So it would be hard to try and carve that out, but I could see if you wanted to focus in on what the FPPC is doing so that we're not overlapping there, that is something we could look at.
I think, yeah, go ahead.
So this is from discussion point of view only.
Yes.
Campaign finance, everything is covered by the FPPC as per the state mandate. We are governed by that.
Yeah.
And some of these conflict of interests are governed by FPPC
Mhm.
at the state level. It's not that, I know you mentioned they're a separate body, but we still responsible to follow FPPC guideline, and
Right.
they are the decision making for the legislative people,
Right.
basically. So how we delineate, like, how we say that this is not a duplication of work, but we already have a state level body which is much more experienced, much more
Right.
administratively handle a lot of these things. How we delineate that? Why we do a duplication of?
Sure. You can avoid a duplication by having your ethics commission focus on the city's policies. The FPPC is focused on violations of the law and not necessarily your local policies on things like campaign finance, ethics, etc. So that would be one way to ensure we're not duplicating.
Member,
So, I mean, I want a point of order, which is I understand that we have a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions as well, but I would like to get to the presentation so that if the questions come up through the course of the presentation, it would be better. But I would just like to, because a lot of the questions, a lot of the comments that I hear now are also comments and questions that I have as well. But I'd like to make sure that they're covered. I mean, this is one of the reasons why letting a public member speak on public presentation for an item on the agenda is it's not a very good thing, because now do we let them speak again? Because they've already spoken on this subject. There's a lot of things that we need to do following process. And there's a good reason for them. It's not about being kind. It's about how do we be fair to the people that are coming to this committee meeting.
So
I was trying
I
to,
don't want to hear an explanation. I'd like to continue with the presentation.
well, I'm running this meeting, Kevin.
Understood. But I'm saying as a point of
Trying
order,
to make it
like to
more
continue the meeting.
interactive, different than a council meeting. And as the chair, I have the ability to do that. So this will not be, full presentation, then questions. So, okay.
okay.
Continue.
Thank you. So focusing on San Francisco's for a moment, and even though it's a legitimate and a good question, well, who's most similar to us population wise and budget wise? I would encourage you to think of this presentation as a discussion of other ethics commissions that I found so that you have a sense of what the options are out there for the city of Santa Clara. So I'm not suggesting, for example, that the city move forward with any one particular commission. I want you to sort of see the buffet of options, and then should you decide to move forward, then we can focus in on what elements you want in an ethics commission here. So San Francisco's Ethics Commission has a lot of independence, but as I mentioned, those commissions that are adopted by voter initiatives, propositions generally tend to be that way. So SF Ethics Commission enforces laws on campaign finance, lobbying, conflicts of interest, and ethics. They have investigative powers, which includes the ability to issue subpoenas, which requires parties to produce records. They can impose fines on offenders, and they have audit authority as well. They have 5 members on their ethics commission with 6-year terms. Another consideration for this committee is, how do we set up an ethics commission? So the way San Francisco does it, they have 5 members, the mayor appoints 1, the board of supervisors appoints 1, the city attorney appoints 1, the DA appoints 1, and the assessor appoints 1. Any proposed rules and regulations of the Ethics Commission do ultimately end up going to their Board of Supervisors for a vote. So on policy changes, they're going to their Board of Supervisors. But on those investigations into alleged violations of the local policies, they have the authority to issue fines, for example, and make findings. In terms of Oakland's Ethics Commission, the jurisdiction, is similar. It's over campaign finance, transparency policies, and government ethics. Also have the ability to conduct audits, investigations, and enforcement of their transparency policies. And they also have management authority over lobbyist registration, gift limits, and whistleblower protections. So the role of the Ethics Commission in Oakland is the stated role is to promote government ethics and transparency. It serves as a quasi-judicial body that adjudicates enforcement matters. In order to get appointed to the Ethics Commission in Oakland, you have to apply. So there's an application process at the city of Oakland. It's a volunteer position. Across the board, that is consistent. You are volunteering for these posts, and you are not to have any financial interest with the city. You're not to be an employee or an elected official of the city, so that true independence. And they serve 3-year terms at the city of Oakland. They were interesting. It's the commission itself selects its members who will join the Ethics Commission. So that was a little different. The San Diego Ethics Commission was also adopted by voters like the San Francisco Ethics Commission. It's, again, a volunteer city body made up of appointed members. There are 7 members that are appointed by the mayor. Now, in San Diego, they have specific qualifications that have to be met for someone to become a commission member. So, for example, at least 2 of the 7 members have to have held some sort of public office before, and at least 3 of the commission members have to be attorneys. And presumably the reason for that is because they want their commissioners to have public sector governance experience and or legal experience. Since we are, when you're talking about conducting these investigations into potential policy violations and legal violations, you're there is a benefit to having people who understand how to read and interpret policies and laws and how investigations are conducted. In order to get on the San Diego's commission, you apply. The mayor makes recommendations to the city council, and then the city council votes on who the actual commissioners will be, and they serve a 5-year term. Yeah, so it's a large department at City of San Diego. The Sacramento Ethics Commission was created relatively recently by ordinance in 2017. They enforce ethics rules for elected officials, candidates, and commission members. They will handle complaints that come into the city about alleged violations. They have the authority to conduct hearings on the issues, to investigate, and to impose administrative penalties. It's a 5-member body. One of the requirements is that you must reside in Sacramento. At least 3 of the members have to have experience in either law, ethics, local government, or a similar field. They require annual training for their commissioners to help keep them up to speed on the city's policies and on any legal changes. Anyone interested can apply to the commission, and then the commission itself makes recommendation to the city council, and the city council votes to approve who will be on the commission, and they serve 4-year terms. In terms of the commissions outside of California that I looked at, again, overall, their charges and what they are doing are similar. I didn't find any ethics commission anywhere in the country that really went beyond what we've talked about so far. That doesn't mean that the city of Santa Clara can't decide to do something different. So again, my point here today is to just educate you about, how things are being done. So in Chicago, there's a board of ethics that was created by ordinance. It governs the conduct of elected officials and employees. It enforces ethics, conflicts, gift limits, lobbying laws, campaign rules. They issue advisory opinions, they conduct investigations, and they can impose some penalties. The Chicago Board of Ethics provides mandatory training for all city employees and officials on their local policies that they have the jurisdiction over. Now, in Chicago, the city also has a committee on ethics and government oversight. And that committee, which is kind of similar to this committee, that committee actually oversees matters involving city council members. And so they are policing themselves, essentially. So if the Board of Ethics is involved with something related to a city council member, it's going back to this committee that the city council has formed for consultation. Let's see. Chicago also expressly says you must reside in the city of Chicago. You cannot be engaged in any political activity. You cannot hold office, a public office. You cannot have a financial interest in any city business in order to serve. It's a volunteer position and a 4-year term. City of Seattle has an ethics and elections commission that oversees campaign finance, ethics, and lobbying. Again, here we have the FPPC in California. I don't know if there's a similar body in the state of Washington. So in Seattle, their ethics commission is doing a lot of work that's election related. They are also volunteers. 7 members of the community 3 of them are appointed by the mayor, 3 of them are appointed by the city council, and then the commissioners themselves pick the 7th member. All of the appointments from the mayor, the council, and the commissioners do get ultimately confirmed by the entire city council, and they serve 3-year terms. We spoke about New York already. They, as I said, have a lot of resources devoted to this. They were structured the most differently of all the agencies that I look at. They work with a Department of Investigations, which is its own standalone body that conducts the investigations. And they also have a campaign finance board that is separate from their ethics commission. So they all work together. So the Conflicts of Interest Board, which is the equivalent of their ethics commission, specifically enforces city charter provisions that are tied to ethics issues. It's a 5-member body appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the city council. New York requires that you not be a city employee or official. You may not hold any political office, and you cannot have any conflict. You cannot have any financial interest in any city business, and you cannot have any conflicts with city business. And you serve a 6-year term. The Miami-Dade Ethics Commission is an independent investigative agency. So it investigates complaints against local government officials and staff, and it enforces local ethics laws. It has subpoena authority and can impose penalties or refer matters to local law enforcement for prosecution. It was created by voter approval. There are 5 members. They serve 4-year terms. They are appointed by one appointed by the mayor, one by the county commissioner, one by a judge of their 11th circuit, and that's their state court judge, one by the deans of all of the law schools in Florida, and one member is appointed by the deans of the business schools in Florida. Now, Miami-Dade was the only commission that I found that actually pays a stipend to its commissioners, but that is not common. They were the outlier in that regard. Boston, we talked about, it's the state that it runs it. It's not they don't have a standalone ethics commission. Washington, D.C. Has a Board of Ethics and Government Accountability, or BEGA, as they call it, and it was established in 2011. Its focus is on, ethics violations and the potential or alleged misconduct by city officials and staff. They have the authority to investigate. They can impose fines and refer to local law enforcement for prosecution, and they oversee and investigate alleged violations on, city policies on lobbying, gifts, nepotism, and outside employment rules. It's a 5-member body appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the city council. They serve 5-year terms, and they cannot have any conflicts with any city business. The last agency that I took a look at was the City of Philadelphia. They have an ethics board that enforces city campaign finance, lobbying, and ethics ordinances. They have the authority to investigate and adjudicate complaints, which means holding hearings on issues, and have the authority to issue fines. Their authority is by city charter, and they have independent authority to hold hearings, investigate, and take punitive action. They are a 7-member body. 3 members are appointed by the mayor, 3 by the city council, and 1 member jointly by the mayor and city council. Philadelphia does not have an application process. It's essentially the mayor and the city council go to people and select who they would like, who they think would be a good fit. No conflict, you cannot have any conflict of interest to become a commissioner, and you serve a 5-year term. So that's a general survey of what we see out there. I want to talk a little bit about the pros and cons of,
Can I?
yes,
Shin?
yes.
When you talk about independent bodies, okay, typically these are going to be investigating any city employee or just the mayor and council. And then if they're being appointed by the mayor and council, how are they independent?
That's a great question.
Have you looked at that issue?
Yeah, so what I will say is, what struck me was the appointment process that some of these agencies have, where, for example, Philadelphia doesn't even have an application process. They're just handpicking their commission members. So that's something for you to take into consideration. What process would you want set up? How independent do you want it to be? What I can say is many of them have the involvement of the mayor and the council in making those decisions. Whether or not you have your commission have authority over staff and elected officials, I think across the board, it's both. And so again, City of Santa Clara can decide what the jurisdiction and the authority of any ethics commission would be, whether it's city staff and elected officials or one or the other.
Okay, thank you.
So then let's chat a little bit about, whoops, I hit the wrong button, Amy. Sorry, I was doing so well.
It's okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So in terms of the benefits to having an ethics commission, it enhances public trust by promoting transparency and accountability of your officials. I'll just use that term broadly. And what officials mean, again, is up to the City of Santa Clara. It provides independent oversight of elected officials and public employees so that there isn't this sense of, you policing yourselves, for example. An ethics commission, particularly if you choose to have members who have certain qualifications, like some of the agencies do, can help you ensure compliance with ethics, lobbying, and campaign finance laws. And they can bring an expertise, to and knowledge base to the commission that can really help make that happen. They can offer advisory opinions. They don't have to have binding authority. And again, if you have, for example, people with a certain level of expertise on your commission, that could be very helpful for the city council and the city. They could also provide training. You could use your commission to implement training to city officials, which would include elected members of the city council and staff members. All of this, the advisory opinions, the training, aimed at reducing any violations, whether they be intentional or unintentional. But, we see, for those of us who are attorneys in particular, we see violations where there is a lot of inadvertent activity going on. People may not even have an understanding that, their actions violate policy or laws. So a commission, that's doing training, issuing advisory opinions could really help your base here at the city. And it can also serve as a deterrence. So if elected officials and city staff understand that there is this ethics commission that's charged with doing investigations, maybe doing hearings, has the authority to take some level of action against officials that could deter misconduct, keep people, operating professionally and in compliance with laws and policies. Can also then reduce corruption in public office if that's a concern. Some of the downsides to having an ethics commission, depending on how you structure it, it could be perceived as a politicized body or a body that doesn't really have independence, right? And if that's the perception of your ethics commission by your community, that could really backfire. So, when you think about, how do we structure this, that's something to be taken into account. It can be very expensive. It will, create essentially a new entity within the city with legal and administrative complexity, especially in those instances at the outset. There was a great question about, well, what about the FPPC and what about the local grand jury? How do we avoid stepping on each other's toes? That's an issue that will have to be taken into consideration. What do we do then when there is an overlap? Because that can happen. So that it just adds a layer of complexity. Investigations. Who's going to conduct the investigations? Where's the money coming if we're having to hire an outside investigator to do that? What will the budget for that be? And the investigations could lead to reputational harm even when no violation is found. And so that's something, to bear in mind as well. I've talked about budgetary resources. They will be required. This will not be something that is a zero cost impact on the city of Santa Clara. And so that is something that will need to be taken into consideration. And that includes, use of your resources within the city. So your existing staff members and the drain and strain on those individuals who already, have the work that they're responsible for here in the city. And the effectiveness of a commission depends heavily on what enforcement powers that they have and what type of public engagement will your commission have. Will there be some sort of reporting that's done to the community about the work of the Ethics Commission? And again, it could take a lot of time, a lot of resources to do that, and could create a lot of chatter in the community that may or may not be positive or healthy for the city. If the city decides to move forward with exploring the adoption of a commission, the roles and the authority of any commission needs to be very clearly defined. And so some of the key questions that you would want to take into consideration are, first of all, what is the purpose and the scope of your ethics commission? What is the problem that they are charged with trying to solve? What misconduct will the commission address? And examples of what other commissions do: ethics policies they investigate and enforce, which includes conflicts of interest, misconduct by elected officials, which is relatively broad, misuse of office, campaign finance issues. It can be really anything ethics related, but you'll want to clearly define what the scope is. You'll want to determine, will the commission be primarily advisory to this committee, to the city council, or will it have the authority to take enforcement action? And if you give the Ethics Commission enforcement action, do they also need to get some sort of approval either from the city council to do that for this commission, or will the commission be truly independent in that regard? Or will you have a hybrid situation where with some things they will have binding authority, with other things they will be advisory in nature to the city council? One of the questions raised was, well, who will the Ethics Commission have jurisdiction over? Is it city staff and elected officials? Is it one or the other? That's the committee's decision to make. Some ethics commissions oversee city staff, elected officials. So cities have appointed officials, to certain subcommittees and whatnot. It can cover them. Contractors, outside contractors with the city, they can have oversight over their activities that are city related, which would include, lobbyists, for example. The last question on purpose and scope: is there an existing body that's already performing some of these functions? And so that's for you to ask, like, this committee, are we doing some of these things already? And do we want to delegate that authority to an ethics commission and delegate it completely, or have them be advisory to us? So these are the types of things, the questions and issues that you want to address when you're thinking about the purpose and the scope of your ethics commission. A second issue that you want to take into consideration is the legal authority and the structure of any ethics commission. How will the commission be created? Will it be through resolution of the city council, or through ordinance, or some other means? We've talked a little bit about what powers the commission will have. Will it have investigative power? Will it have the power to issue subpoenas? Will it have the power to hold hearings? Will it have the power to either recommend or impose penalties? Will it have the power to make referrals to law enforcement or the grand jury or the FPPC? Those types of things we'll want to drill down on. What due process protections will apply? If your ethics commission makes a finding that someone has, for example, violated some sort of conflict of interest policy, what sort of notice will that individual or those individuals be provided? What opportunity, if any, will they have to be heard on the findings against them? Will there be an appeals process? So those are some of the structuring and the legal authority issues that you want to take into account. A third area that you want to take into account is the appointment. And, how do you compose the ethics commission? Who will appoint the ethics commissioners? I didn't find any ethics commission where they're voted by the local community. So it's all by appointment is how it's done. And so, who will be responsible for the appointment? Is confirmation by the city council going to be required? How many commissioners will you have? How long will their terms be? And will you have some sort of mechanism set up for the removal of the commissioners based on misconduct by a commissioner, for example? I think that'll be important because some of these commissions, they're serving 6-year terms, 7-year terms. So you want to take it into account. What if we have a commissioner who goes rogue? We've got to have some sort of mechanism, to remove them. When you're thinking about your commissioners, what are the qualifications? Do we want specialized knowledge? We've got some of the agencies want a certain number of lawyers. They want a certain number of individuals who have some elected official experience. So what are the qualifications that we would require? Is anyone disqualified from serving? For example, a current city employee? Do we want to disqualify city employees? Do we want to disqualify city council members? Is there anyone else we want to disqualify? Anyone who's engaged or interacted in business with the city? You may want to disqualify those individuals as well. Staffing, budget, and operations. How will it function? This is a significant issue for the city to take into account. Can't just set up an ethics commission and then not have it have some sort of budget for the work that it is doing. And so that will be something that needs to be taken into consideration and hopefully studied by the city, before the decision is made. Will you have dedicated staff to the ethics commission? Will you have legal counsel for the ethics commission? Will it have a budget? Who will control the ethics commission's budget? Is the budget large enough to support the work of the ethics commission? So if they have the authority, for example, to hold hearings, or to do investigations, or to provide training to city officials, how will that be funded? The next overarching issue that the committee will need to take into account if it wants to move forward with a proposal for an actual ethics commission to be set up, is confidentiality and transparency, which sound diametrically opposed, but both will be very important. So will certain complaints be kept confidential? Are anonymous complaints going to be entertained by the commission? When there are findings made, say, for example, if there's an investigation, will those be made public by the commission? And if so, how will they be communicated? And if they're not going to be made public, how do you address that component, with the public, if and when there are questions from the public about why things are being kept confidential? Enforcement and penalties, another major area that we'll want to look at if the committee decides to move forward with trying to set up an ethics commission. What, if any, penalties can the ethics commission impose? Let's assume the commission does get the power to impose penalties or fines. Who will enforce those penalties? Will there be a cap on any type of action or penalties that the ethics commission can be imposed? You have a city attorney. What will the role of the city attorney be, if any, with the ethics commission? Will the city attorney represent the commission? Will the city attorney provide support to the commission, which will take your city attorney away from other things that he or she is doing currently at the city? But that will be something important to take into consideration. Education, what will we do, if anything, to keep our commissioners trained up? And will we require them to have a certain amount of training annually on ethics? Will we have the commission do training for our city officials and staff members? So those are, some of the things to be taking into consideration. These are, if you were to say to me, Maureen, we want to see a proposal, for an ethics commission. These are the types of things that I would be looking at in, bringing forward something for your consideration. But, what I wanted to do in this presentation today was talk with you about how these are structured out there, give you an opportunity to have a discussion about the issues, And I'm here to, help answer any questions. If there's any follow-up that you would like me to do specifically on any of these issues, I'm happy to do that. And yeah, so I will stop there. I think, Councilmember Park, this is a good time, to stop for questions. I think if there are questions. Yep.
Hey, do we have any questions? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Questions or discussion and say, yeah.
Okay, I have a lot of questions, a lot of comments. I'll just make a few. I mean, we know that the only thing worse than rules without enforcement is enforcement without rules. We talk about backgrounds, and I think that not having elected positions or financial interests does not go far enough when it comes to investigative boards, that, as we have seen. When we talk about legal guardianships or probate, we have something called guardian ad litem. I don't know what that is, but you have to show that you have no relationship with the people. This is something that's very difficult. It was brought up earlier about if they're appointed, then it's very difficult to show that there is no, but I think that having no relationship or showing independence is one of the most important things when it comes to something like this. When I hear about the appointment processes, when I hear about I don't see anything that even touches the bar of independence. And there's a lot of questions. I mean, at some point that a GAL is a legal oath at some point, and you can be removed for, not having your legal oath, violating the legal oath. There's lots of questions like, when do commissions not refer or investigate items? Can they be coerced to investigate items? What accountability do they have? We talked about this a little bit, but I mean, without talking about how we do accountability, because we don't have accountability even now. I mean, elected officials are already subject to laws. There's FPPC, as you suggested, but there are state laws, there are federal laws, there are many things that elected officials must do that non-elected officials do not. And this comes into conflict every election period when you've got candidates who are not electeds who are not subject to the same rules, and they can go out and claim whatever they want. The ethics of having candidates sign private ethics pledges, it's like, what is that? I mean, at some point we've got an ethics person that purports to know a lot about ethics and uses historic background with the city to talk about legal matters, which they clearly do not understand. To have people sign ethics pledges that require stances on items that may come up before a board, which that's not legal. I mean, when an ethics pledge requires that you break an ethics rule, I think at some point we need to question what the pledge is, and we need to question where the pledges are coming from. I mean, if there are no ways to hold elected officials accountable for actions outside of the legal requirements, I mean, there aren't. I mean, outside, you have to wait till the next election cycle, or maybe you go through a recall process. We've had admonishments and censures in this council, and those don't actually mean anything. They don't actually come with consequences. I know that other jurisdictions, higher offices, county supervisors, assembly members, senators, congressmen, they're all subject to censure and admonishment, and those often come with removal from committees. They often come with, lots of different things. But that doesn't happen in the city because we don't have a policy for that. And not having a policy for enforcement, it has created a terrible environment. Like, I used to sit at the very end of the council chambers where I'm looking at the conduct. I mean, and the conduct clearly says we should be professional. And we have, even today, people who are on the council who they don't even say hello. They actively move against you. They actively, insult you to your face in public meetings when all you said was hello. They've yelled at children. They've yelled at my children, at my child. Again, like we are putting the cart before the horse, which is we're trying to say, let's have another committee to try to do things that without any kind of rules or justification. And I understand the appearance. The appearance is we'd like to be more transparent so that we feel better about this. And I'm going to say what I said last time, knowing that the same people that were here last time are online, which is when I talk to the people in my neighborhood, when I talk to the people across the city, when I talk to people outside the city about Santa Clara who are very, well versed with the politics of Santa Clara, the ethics of the people complaining are not what's concerned. I mean, they're concerned, but I think what they would like to do is they'd like to weaponize groups, they'd like to weaponize committees and commissions as they've always done. I mean, even here, many policies give much say to the mayor or of the jurisdictions. These are large cities. They are not like Santa Clara at all. If I take a look at Oakland, Oakland is 3 times larger. It's got 440,000 people. It's 78 square miles. It is more than 4 times larger. It's got a larger budget, and our budget is enhanced because we've got our utility. We've got an enterprise funding utility. And right now, we give, I think, executive staff and staff given an inordinate amount of power to the mayor without support. It's not supported by a charter. I mean, it's funny, but we literally had in the Governance and Ethics Committee a statement by executive staff saying, well, this is what the mayor can do as stated by the charter. And there was no support in the charter. Even in the report that executive staff gave, there was nothing in that executive report that supported the statements that they had made. We have heard on one side that, well, the mayor should be allowed to do this because in my professional experience, because we have seen that other jurisdictions allow this, but council members, you can't do this because there is nothing that explicitly states that you can do this. We've got this double standard where council members cannot do things because there is no rule allowing them to do that. And the mayor is not prohibited from things because there is no rule disallowing this. If we cannot solve these underlying problems first, then simply setting another committee, with no clear way to show independence, this doesn't make any sense. I mean, I've got a lot more saying, but I would like to address some of these issues. And at some point, I have no confidence that executive staff will be open and honest about this. It's like we trade justice for consistency, and then we trade consistency for convenience, and we trade convenience for, I don't know, but these are not these are the slippery slopes that have plagued this council more than the ethics. Meaning we have a lot of transparency policies. We've got council calendars. We've got dark money ordinances. We've got communications with constituents and lobbyists, communications apps that have come into question, and none of those are followed. I've had executive staff tell me explicitly that, oh, it's no use. I've had staff tell me explicitly it's no use filing PRAs against the mayor explicitly because, well, they won't follow it anyway. This is a huge problem, right? When even executive staff will not do this, and I see people are wrinkling their brows, but I'm sure we can get people who will validate these statements. If we can't even, correct the problems with the rules and regulations that we have, if we don't see the problems with our transparency, our ordinances and our policies that are there for transparency, then having another ethics policy that's being driven by people who are the ones driving a lot of the ethics problems, that's tremendous. This is a big problem. And if this body cannot see that and will not see that, then, they deserve whatever they get.
Okay, did you have a question in there?
Oh, there were some questions already. How do we do accountability? What do we do about GALs? What do we do? How do we do this? How do we get accountability? How do we get consequences when, people don't even follow the basic rules of conduct? And, we don't do that. Are we good at people don't follow conduct rules? Do we investigate those kinds of things? What kind of accountability accountability? These are all baseline things, even before we're talking about how do we set up a committee and we'll worry about these details. I'm sorry, but what you said here is very important. You've got to set up the details first. If you don't have those details, you don't have those rules, if you don't have the things set up well, simply putting together a committee is dangerous.
Yeah, so if I may,
Yes.
thank you. the surveyed agencies all appoint their commission members. So, that is information for this body. You would have the authority to have the selection process work however the city wants that to work. So, I don't have anything, Councilmember Park, to share beyond that. It's the prerogative, of the city. Assuming you decide to move forward with this, there's nothing that, requires you to have an ethics commission. I want to make sure that that's clear as well. So if there are concerns about, well, we don't want the elected officials making the appointments, I'll point to the Miami-Dade model where they've got the local deans of the law schools making one appointment. They have a local judge making one appointment. They have the deans of the business schools getting together to make one of the appointments. So that's, an example of how to do that. Nothing stops you from having people elected into the position. Again, I'm not making recommendations around that. These are options that exist for the city.
But even with those appointments, my question is, how do we address the questions of independence as we would with a gal?
Yeah, I think inherent in an ethics commission that is tied to the city, you will always be addressing questions of transparency, independence. I think it's inherent in the nature of the work.
And I know we have. I've given examples of how we try to do that. And I can give you lots of examples how that is not working, that
Yeah.
doesn't work. I mean, there's a question that people ask, which is, why do cheaters win? And it's often met with the answer, cheaters never win. Oh, I'm sorry. Like we say this all the time, they avoid consequences, they avoid investigation, they don't have to turn over. Rules only restrict those who are following the rules, right? The real answer to the question, why do cheaters win, is because they cheat, right? And at some point, cheaters love rules. Cheaters love things that make it harder for other people to play the game or to win. And if you don't have any intent on following those rules, it's very easy to put more and more and more rules in place. And I think at some point we need to look at that process, the process of what rules are we putting in place? How are we enforcing those rules? How are those rules being applied equally and consistently across the entire board? And if and when that does not happen, then we've got a problem. Like we had a censure motion 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And people think, it's been lost in the narrative. People think that censure motion was for denying people the ability to speak. Oh, I'm sorry, that was not the censure motion. And that certainly wasn't the censure motion that I put for, that I voted for. The censure motion was because a council member lied. They lied about the setup of the event. They lied about what happened at the event, and then they tried to cover it up. Right. At some point, this was not about denying people a voice. That happens all the time. Nobody cares about that. But when you've got an elected official lying and on a recording, on video, lying about something, we can talk about lies all day. And staff has done absolutely nothing to correct this. Right. I could tell you about June 7th, 2022 and June 21st, 2022, where the mayor lied about the DARE program, was corrected by staff twice, and then lied again on May 24th, 2022. You can see it. On the YouTube video, there is at 3 hours and 19 minutes in, the lie about the DARE program. The council cut it last year. Something we have no jurisdiction over. On the June 7th meeting, you'll see, 2 hours, 56 minutes in. For the next 20 minutes, there's just outright lying. I literally read the staff response and it was repeated. Like at some point if we have no accountability, if we're not actually going to do anything about the rules that are being violated already, then simply setting up another committee, again, with no accountability, with no promises of independence, with no signatures that say without a good appointment process, doesn't make any sense to me. And at some point, it's not just a council problem. This is the problem with staff and executive management. And for people who say it's not, I'm saying you can blame the children for getting into a lot of trouble. But if there are people who are supposed to be managing those children At some point, they need to be held accountable too. Like we say, talk about legal standard. Legal standard is the absolute lowest bar. You know, I've said this many times, and I'll say this again in the Governance and Ethics Committee, which is the worst city manager that we would have hired is still bound to legal rules. Like there is no greatness attributed to simply I'm following the rules. I would like to also, point out, especially during this time, that it's not the people that were following the rules that saved, millions of people during the Holocaust. It was the people that were not following the rules. At some point, there is a legal standard that we talk about that doesn't make any sense when we actually talk about feet on the ground, rubber, meeting the road and getting stuff done. And if we're not going to hold people accountable, simply having more committees to look at things doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay. You have some questions?
No.
Okay. So really what we're faced with is ethics. We have law where you have to follow the law. And then ethics is more of a subjective gray area where, people, we don't have law to hold them to that. We have maybe admonishment or censure or shame to do that. What we're trying to get to is how do we hold people more accountable for those things that are not law?
Right, for those things that are not,
Not law.
um,
Okay, and so the FPC supposedly handles matters of law, but they take a long time to resolve some cases.
Yeah.
And they don't actually do a lot of investigation. I found their investigation to be very poor. So we had a situation in the city of Santa Clara where two council members were accused of doing an operational tour of the stadium. And there was an FPPC complaint. It took 2 years to resolve, maybe 3 years. And there was reputational harm because there was an FPPC investigation.
right,
The FPPC investigation found there was no issue there,
right.
but there was extreme reputational harm that happened. And so my question is that if you look at these, I don't know if you watch some of these ethics commission meetings in these other cities, but I've had a large number of FPC complaints against me that went nowhere. So how do these ethics committees handle the weaponization of complaints? And then if you could just, I know you surveyed how in all of these cities people were appointed,
Uh-huh.
kind of what the jurisdiction, whether they could impose fines or refer things. But what I'd like to see for each of those is what was their annual budget? What was their meeting schedule? And what was the purview for the ethics commission? Was it just the council members' actions, or was it contractors and staff like you had already mentioned?
Okay.
And so I wanted to understand if you have any sense of how these commissions handle bad actors, creating hundreds of PRAs, hundreds of FPPC complaints, and getting overwhelmed and consuming huge amounts of city budget. So if you have any sense of that.
Yeah, so I don't have information on, their annual budgets, but can absolutely, or meeting schedule, but I can absolutely get that information. In terms of the purview of each of them, they are relatively broad. So they are overseeing alleged violations by elected officials, city staff, and outside vendors and contractors. But I think it was City of Sacramento. Yeah, is, I think, more limited, but I can, get more information on that as well. To your point about the weaponization of the commissions, I want to make sure I'm understanding. Are you referring to individuals making complaints that would, or bodies making complaints that would come before the ethics commission that you feel are being made for insincere reasons, like they are, to weaponize them. So part of the purpose of giving your commission an investigative authority is to help determine that. And so that is the only way that would be determined. When an investigation is done, if there's an allegation by the person or persons being investigated that in fact this is not reality, this is being weaponized, then that's something that would be hopefully be included within the scope of that investigation. And then if the follow-up question from there is, well, what action can the Ethics Commission take against the individual or individuals weaponizing those complaints? I want to look to see if I can find examples of that within these other commissions. So I can look into that further. I don't have an example for you off the top of my head. And I'm trying to think, without violating the attorney-client privilege, obviously. I work as an employment lawyer, so I'm representing agencies throughout the state. And, there are steps that can be taken to address these types of issues that can be taken outside the scope of an ethics commission. You don't need an ethics commission to do that, is, my point. But I'm happy to look into those other jurisdictions to see if they've got any issues like that.
Yeah, because I know for a fact, the PRA process in California has no guardrails. People can submit hundreds of FPPC complaint or PRA
Right, that is correct.
requests that bog down city staff and bog down the whole system.
Mhm.
So I want to make sure there are guardrails for bad actors, insincere actors, weaponization of these commissions.
Yep.
And then, there's some gray areas that we have in the city. The city has its own ordinances that are rare among other cities, like our public calendar ordinance and our lobby registration ordinance, which there is no enforcement whatsoever for those. So if the council member doesn't put meetings on their public calendar, nothing happens. If a lobbyist, somebody who's representing a business interest, doesn't register, there is absolutely no recourse for us to really make sure that they are. We had one person who just lied about how much time and money they were being paid to lobby. And the city has no subpoena to figure out how much did you really get paid.
Yeah.
So those are things. So when I see the FPPC, which has their laws, the city has our rules.
Please.
We don't have any enforcement in our own rules. And that's probably where the Ethics Commission will get involved. But you would have to go, like, people, I presume, are lying on their Form 700. How do you, financial information is very proprietary. It's protected by lots of laws, right? Can these commissions actually subpoena tax records and things like that?
So the scope of the subpoena power.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you find that somebody is not representing their financial interest properly.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to find that.
So you can give that subpoena power to your commission, but then if the person or entity subpoenaed refuses to comply, then what do you do then?
That's exactly.
And you may end up having to go into court to enforce anything more than that. And again, there's a cost and an expense associated with that, not just monetary, but time-wise. And
And we've had Brown Act about allegations, for council members meeting in a Denny's, right?
mhm,
And how do we control that? What are we supposed to do about that?
yeah,
So, and then, apparently somebody on the council had business interests close to the Morse Mansion and voted in closed session to purchase the Morse Mansion. So what recourse do we have for that?
Yeah.
I don't see any recourse for that. So there's a lot of things that I'm trying to understand how other commissions deal with these types of issues.
Yeah. And they can deal with them within the scope of the authority that they have. So if the commission has subpoena authority, they can issue subpoenas. To enforce a subpoena, you have to go to court. In terms of, the examples you gave of alleged misconduct by elected officials, you do have censure authority as a city council. And people may feel like, well, what does that do? Ultimately, elected officials are accountable to the voters. And so that is a public way of getting the information out to the community about what the misconduct has been. And ultimately, it's the community that's making the decisions about who will serve on the city council. So although it may not feel adequate at times, that is why those mechanisms are there, and in place. And so when you think about, well, what can an ethics commission do to support the work of the council, to promote transparency with the public, to promote accountability? Again, it'll depend on the scope of the powers. So will they have investigative power? And if so, what are the resources they have to conduct an investigation? It's not free to do an investigation, right? What sort of hearing power will they have? Can they call witnesses, have hearings? What sort of penalties can be imposed? So you can empower this separate body to do that, while also bearing in mind, you brought up PRA examples, violations of the PRA Act, Brown Act violations. These are all governed by law as well. So the city can take litigation action against individuals, for example, who are abusing the PRA, for individuals who are violating the Brown Act. Like, there are already mechanisms in place for, dealing with a lot of what we're talking about here. And the Ethics Commission role is to help investigate those and, either make findings, either through an investigation and or hearing process. And those findings are either acted upon by the Ethics Commission, or they're submitted to the city council, or maybe this committee, which will then submit to the city council for action. And then the authority the city council has, things like censures and admonition, again, that's to shine a light on the misconduct so that the voters have the information, so that when they're voting as to who is going to be on their city council, they know what their council member is up to.
So when these commissions are doing these investigations, are they putting people under oath? Like, let's say there's a Brown Act violation and you call those people in and you ask them if they met at Denny's. Are they under perjury for that?
So if there's a hearing authority, then yes, they can be, sworn under oath when they testify. They're giving testimony at a hearing. Generally speaking, with investigations, whoever the investigator or the investigative body is, asking that people be truthful and getting their agreement that they be truthful. And so if they're not truthful, then adverse findings can be made against an individual as part of that investigation. So generally speaking, that's how that works.
Okay, thank you. I think we had,
Understood, but I have a question about that last comment.
Yeah.
So when you say that adverse findings can be made against an individual, that's if and only if the investigative body decides to pursue that. But again, there are many instances where there seems to be a lot of reason, there seems to be a lot of justification for doing something, and the body says we will not do that. At some point, that could be a question of independence. That could be a question of, well, where's the ethics there? How does that get addressed? What are the mechanisms to ensure that, even the people watching the watchers
Right.
are, in fact, they have oaths that they are taking, which subject them to
Yeah.
the same types of prosecutions, the same types of investigations that they themselves
Yeah.
are.
You mean the commissioners
That's
themselves?
correct.
Yes. So oaths, training on what their roles and responsibilities and obligations are, a removal process, should, that be required. So you can build all of that into.
Because the first two do nothing to
Mhm.
provide consequences. The removal process, which we haven't even touched on, that's a more important procedural matter. Like we're talking about logistics, like how do we do this? How often do we meet, schedules? The logistics do nothing
Yeah.
to make the body a better body, to improve its job. And we have not talked about any of the things that are required to ensure that the body is good.
Mhm.
Okay, Member John.
Thank you. Coming back to the body, like defining the rule and authority.
Yeah.
Is a must. And
Yes.
it can be different for different jurisdictions,
Mhm.
basically.
Yes.
And at the same time, we should not be duplicating the work.
You should not be duplicating.
The work.
Okay.
Right. Like I
You mean between your committee and a
our
committee?
committee or FPPC or censure policy or something like that. If we have a defined censure policy,
Mhm.
council should be able to take action. Okay, let's take action
Mhm.
depending upon what, because it's a 2/3 council majority has to decide on that. The guardrails on that, so we can take action on that instead of burdening some other commission or whatever you want to decide about it. So that's very paramount, like what authority, what rules, if at all we are going that route, what are we really trying to solve basically from this thing?
Right.
All the cities you mentioned, they're all metropolis. Most of them are huge cities.
Right.
So I know Councilmember Jane mentioned budget frequency of meeting. We need to find out like how much budget they're spending on this thing.
Right.
For a city like us, and that's the reason we were asking, is there any comparable city which has this type of a setup? So that, because we have to cognizant of staff time, we have to cognizant of who will manage the meetings, who will, like city attorney's bandwidth, his office bandwidth, who will manage that part of it. And then we can make a decision. We have to correlate with the staff also. Do we have a budget? Do we have a timelines on this? And what frequency? Is it going to be monthly, weekly? Because we had meetings which have been postponed in the past, not holding meetings for almost a year, like marketing and those meetings. We could not hold those meetings. Are we trying to burden the staff or even financially? What can be the solution? And laws, how we define I know laws are already defined on the books, but at the same time, what suggestions can come from the council or the community or the staff? How can we make implementation of those laws more transparent and trustworthy?
Mhm.
Like if somebody is breaking the laws, or whether it's Brown Act or whether it's something else, blatantly, what course of action we have? Like, in addition, like we can decide about this commission, but if we don't decide about it, what can be the ways to solve these things, basically, in the existing framework? Appeal process, let's say even if we have this commission, they find something. What is the appeal process for the person who has been decided against, basically?
Right. That is something to take into consideration, whether there would be some sort of appeal process or due process. Yes.
Primarily, this came from the grand jury findings, basically, right?
Yes.
And grand jury findings, the council and the people like me and other people on the council have blatantly mentioned this is wrong. That was highly politicized or whatever you want to call it, right? Like Councilmember Chen was mentioning, operational tour, which went ahead and for grand jury indicted for me that, oh, you did that, and FPPC, which is the current body, which solved those cases after 2 years, I don't know what time frame was it, said, no, you didn't do nothing wrong. And you are already basically in the community, in the reputational harm was done basically, right? After 2 years, you didn't do anything wrong. Even in the other grand jury, like I spoke for 5 seconds when the gavel was hit, and it became one of the big issues in the grand jury. Like, can I believe that grand jury, what they are sending that? Can I believe that? Can I believe that the grand jury recommendation for this commission is only because of all those things which they define? I don't agree to that, basically. So politicization of one way or the other, how we stop that? How can we stop that, basically? Weaponization, whether it's grand jury weaponization, whether it's commission weaponization or other filing complaints itself. Like you'll be blamed, but you didn't do anything wrong, but your decision doesn't come. And it's a harm to a person against whom you are filing a claim. So those are the things like we would like to find out, like if we do that, where we land up. But if we don't do this commission, how can we fast track solution of some of these things in the current system? Is there a way out we can find a solution to that fast track of these things issue, basically?
If I may, in California, I did not find a city comparable in Santa Clara size that has an ethics commission. It is these larger jurisdictions. And so that's something for you to take into account. And I think part of that is just the resources associated with, establishing something like this. To the point of, well, if we don't have the ethics commission, how do we address these issues? There are a variety of ways. You've got state laws, you've got federal laws. If there are alleged violations of those, the city could take legal action, and you maybe use your city attorney's office, outside counsel, if there are issues that are legal in nature where you can bring action against an individual for violation. You can treat issues that arise on a case-by-case basis. If there's an allegation of misconduct by a city council member, for example, and I'm just speaking hypothetically, the city council could decide to retain the services of an investigator to investigate that particular issue, to help the city council decide, do we need to take some sort of action against this city council member? There's only so much that a city council can do in that instance. And so maybe you will vote to censure the member based on the findings of this investigation. So we have, in California and here at the local level, there are mechanisms in place. If you were to adopt a standalone ethics commission, they would help you maneuver through that system. So they could help with investigations. They could help with holding hearings to determine, whether something happened. There's no requirement that you have an ethics commission. So this is something within your jurisdiction to make that decision. And there are no smaller, population-wise, smaller agencies in California that have these types of commissions.
Okay,
I'd like to,
Member Park.
I'd like to go to the public. I mean, I have
I
a lot of
was
responses.
planning to go to the
Yeah.
bank.
Here, once the council is done, I have a question. Last time.
So I'm just going to make a couple of comments and then I would like to go to the public. The thing that I like about it is maybe putting it to a vote of the public, passing it by measure. The other thing I really like is, and this is something that I saw was a problem with even our grand jury, was you just have ordinary people with no expertise on the grand juries. You don't have any people with legal expertise. So having, like what Miami-Dade does, which, you get somebody from a business background, you get somebody from a legal background. Some of them require a large number of attorneys. Some require previous electeds, right? I like that idea to bring in some level of expertise into this commission. So those are things that I heard that I like about this. But I think there's just so many outstanding issues that my preference is to have you come back with some answers for this, or you could maybe do them by mail to us, however we want to do this. I know it's been tough trying to schedule these meetings, so it's up to this committee to decide whether we want to agendize it for a future committee meeting or we want to just have you respond in writing to us.
And I'm happy to do it either way. I was on leave for a period of time in 2025, but I'm back and
Okay.
yes.
But I think even if we get response in writing, we'll have to come back for discussion for transparency point of view.
Yeah. Okay, so I think at this point, I'd like to go to members of the public for comment.
Ask just a point of clarification on comments from the public. Am I to respond to comments from the public?
No,
No.
we just listen.
Okay, thank you.
I think I'm unmuted.
You are
Wanda-
unmuted, Wanda Buck.
Thank you.
Yes.
Wanda Buck, you're one citizen or two. Considering that we all want positive ethics to do what is right, and that includes the appearance thereof, I sincerely hope, and I think I hear a lot of good questions, that there will be consideration of the possibility of a new program, a separate commission with more information. And I sorry to have to defend myself because I've been following this for years. And we do have an ethics problem, in my opinion, in Santa Clara. I know thousands of people. I'm connected to many nonprofit organizations, Voters League, the universities, and I'm not speaking on behalf of that. And even in the pool, it's a senior center. And there's hardly a person that when you mention ethics in Santa Clara and all the notoriety, right or wrong, from the grand jury, that my nephew in Santa Cruz and the news, that there are a lot of people that feel negative about our ethics. And so the idea of moving towards improvement, there's no perfection in the human nature of lying and cheating, but moving towards improvement, you all still as council members and the full council, will have some control. There's no perfection. But my interest in this, and since I've been in grammar school, is that if we all contribute a little bit to the communities that we're in, that they're better. And the council has questioned why people don't participate more. And part of an example is being put down. I'm not running for office. I'm not for, representing some council person. This isn't political with me. It's to make our city better. And I've been involved in professional standards in the real estate community for over 40 years. So I know we can do better. And I hear from the discussion and the questions you have that we really should go forward to explore more. Thank you.
I have no more members of the public who wish to speak.
Okay,
Wait,
okay.
just raise their hand. Dr. Shanks, you are unmuted.
I have a point of order. A point of order is we've had a pulpit member already speak on this item in the public input. And again, I suggest that the chair, by not following the guidelines, is creating an unfair advantage in a public meeting. I mean, that's my suggestion. I understand you'd like to make this more open, but again, this is one of the dangers. I think that if this member would like to speak, I would like to hear that somebody has given up their time for this member to speak as they have already spoken. We usually have a rule against people speaking twice. In this case, I'm willing to look at this, but I would like somebody to give up their time for them to do this. And this is, again, the danger in a public meeting when we are trying to give equal time and we are trying to follow rules for not following the guidelines.
I fully understand that, but we are not running out of time and we don't have.
Oh, this is not about time. You have not heard my complaint. My complaint was about fairness in
I
a public
understand.
meeting.
It's fairness, and I will entertain somebody else who wants to come back and speak again. So, Dr. Shanks, go ahead.
Dr. Shanks, you should be allowed to speak if you unmute yourself.
Okay, I've been having trouble with this.
We can hear you.
Okay, so did you hear what I was just saying about, I saw a difference between the public comment and this because I was not addressing this specific agenda item. And I wanted to have the opportunity to respond and to suggest that I really like the questions that you're addressing. I like many of the positions to the extent you're taking positions. I like those. What I was going to say is, why not open up this discussion and listen to what the public has to say, not just during this particular meeting, but in a much broader sense. If the purpose of a commission is for public trust, then it seems to me some of this should have been in the agenda, and that there should be a process that involves the public before the report is done and the city staff has a chance to respond to it, which is what the contract says or suggests. So I was just going to say, listen to the public. And to the extent you don't, then you really do raise questions of public trust. That's all I was going to say.
Thank you. Any other hands?
No.
Right. So we bring it back to the committee. Any suggestions for how to move forward?
I have more comments, which is, I mean, I've heard vote of the public, but a vote of the public without thinking the details through is dangerous. I mean, putting something on a ballot without the background worked out usually leads to things that do not happen, and things that, are get put on. We discuss for 1 hour at a meeting with public input, and then we don't get a good process. I've heard comments about people with background, but I'll tell you, there are bad lawyers too. There are bad prosecutors, there are bad teachers, there are bad doctors, and we need to find a way to identify bad actors for the sake of the good teachers and for the sake of the good doctors and the good people who are trying to do the work. Like, when people talk about what we could do, the short answer is, how do we build trust? And the short answer is, we say what we will do and then we do it, which we do not. I think that this is one of the problems. And because we do not, we allow a lot of bad information to fester and grow. I mean, we've had a censure motion on council priorities for years, and that was just recently removed by executive staff, supposedly because nobody voted for it, but I guarantee that people did, right? I feel like we are not, following through with the items that we have already discussed and voted on. We are asking for additional food while ignoring the food already on our table. And I think this is one of the things that erodes trust in the system, not just from the public, because a lot of people complain about that, but also from the people on this council. Like, I'm going to say that just outright. I mean, the grand jury recommendations for an ethics commission, they should be taken with the same seriousness as the reports. I mean, the reports were factually incorrect. Factually incorrect. Some of them were so factually incorrect that it's like, I don't even have to address this. Why? Because I can't address it because it never happened. The claiming that I went on a stadium tour, I've never been on a stadium tour. Like, even recently, the closest one we had was the one several weeks ago, but I didn't even go I never went on an operational tour before a game either. Right. But we all know that, just like the FPPC complaints that, Committee Member Chahal and others have been suspected to, it's not about it's not about what happened. It's not about ethics. It's about accusations. It's about media. It's about presence. It's about news stories, because we know that the accusations that can get repeated are the most important thing, especially if the findings exonerate the members. Like, at some point, this is not about ethics. This is about reputation. This is about trying to create a narrative. Like, we have a member of the audience, the audience who claims, oh, they left when the city abandoned the ethics program. We never abandoned an ethics program. And if you do a PRA request on contracts for the people who have been the ethics advisors, you will find that we never renewed an ethics advisor contract from 2014 to 2018 for this person. We've never done that. Again, I've done this request. I have the receipts right in my office. I suggest everyone try to do this. And when their claims are made by an ethics advisor, someone who's purporting to do ethics, that cannot be supported, that seem unethical in and of themselves, at what point are we going to stop and say, well, we need to ignore this, we need to look at this, we need to look at the facts and move forward? But we don't do that. And I don't care about budget. Like, somebody could come in, an organization could come in and say, we will do the ethics committee, we will do the management, we'll do that all for free, right? And volunteers already work for free. But without accountability, without, all the things, the independence, without the findings that are more important than the work itself and logistics, we should say no. I mean, the PRA danger, we talk about this all the time. This is work, is not just about taking up staff time and taking up system and money, but every additional hour of addressing a PRA, especially long PRAs, makes the system open to mistakes, and mistakes happen. I've talked to reporters who put in PRA requests, and they've told me, oh, these were these were unredacted. I've got personal information that's out there. And it's not that people did this maliciously, but it makes things open to mistakes. Some of those mistakes, I can't help seem purposeful. Like, I've had a number of reports against me, a PRA request where police released a report which clearly showed that there was no domestic violence against me. But then they had to say, well, we released that report. We should not have released that report, right? And even though the reports show that there was no problem with me, that the accusations being laid against me are not true, the fact that the police then said, well, you must destroy those reports because, well, we unfortunately released those reports inappropriately. Now the narrative is, well, they're asking us to destroy the reports, so there must be hiding something. You have the reports. You've seen what the reports say. All you're doing is change the narrative, because the people who are trying to do bad things by telling us, oh, you've got an ethics problem. Oh, these bad things are happening. Council members are doing these bad things. We've got council members not following that are not following FPPC, legal requirements. This is wagging the dog. Like, we've seen this. I mean, we know why lies are effective. Lies are effective because they work. Because lies are really easy to say loudly and quickly. And following up to find out what those answers are, that's really difficult. And I think that this is what the people who are trying to create a narrative and disrupt the flow are trying to do. And every time an issue comes up that we do not investigate, that when we investigate and we make a motion and we pass that motion, and we do not actually go through with the action on those, that's what disrupts trust long-term from the people on the dais and for the public, where the public's asking, why did this happen? You know, we talk about the 7 people outside of council that watch the council meetings, and it seems very true. Right? I know that this council, knowing no better, is going to try to do something that appears to be good. But I'm going to say that doing things for appearance without actually putting the work in, that's very dangerous. I come from aerospace. We have one rule, and this rule goes against almost everything that I see in real life, which is things that are broken should look broken so that nobody accidentally uses them and causes a bigger problem. Right? If we are putting in place a quick fix, so we want to put together an independent ethics commission, we want to do this, we want to do this for a quick fix to make it look like we've got more transparency in ethics, that is not the problem. The fact that we do not actually follow through with consequences, the fact that we actively remove censure motions, the things that we talk about we should do more, we actively remove that. That is a bigger problem. The fact that we don't address the issues that are already in front of us, you know, the fact that we claim we are legal, you know, we don't want to pursue them because it's a waste of our time. It's a waste of resources. We've got other priorities. This is the big problem in this city. Again, people know that there are lies being said, and that every single time this city and this management, this staff chooses to ignore them, it makes the problem worse. And it lets the voices that are asking, that are putting together the civil grand jury investigations and referrals, it makes their voices louder. And at some point, if we do not think about this, then again, you deserve what you get. These are terrible, terrible times. The fact that we are not looking at where these recommendations are coming from the civil grand jury that lied on their reports, the civil grand jury that has no accountability, the civil grand jury that doesn't release transcripts, that chooses not to do investigations for things that, for some things when they will for others. Again, we should not be asking for more when we are not dealing with what we already have. And as long as we continue to do that, we are just making the problem worse. And the people that do not understand that there is a better problem, that if you don't put the foundations in, simply putting walls on top of the ground that's already there is not a safe thing to do. I would like to see more and more discussion about this before we make any kind of referrals. I would like to know more about how we can put together consequences, how we can put together oaths that hold the people on the ethics commissions responsible, accountable for their actions, how they can be prosecuted if things go bad. Because right now, civil grand jury, they can lie. I'm not saying they do, but they can lie. And there are absolutely no consequences to that. They can withhold things. They can tell me there are things that I cannot talk about that seem obvious. I'm not allowed to talk about that. And I think that these kinds of rules, the rules that remove accountability, the rules that hold, that give power to some and not to others, these are the problems that we have. And right now, without following through on the things on our plate, we've essentially done that. We've essentially said that some people are more equal than others. And this is not a good thing. Right. And guidelines are very good. Rules are very good. We have them for a reason. And when we choose not to follow them, then simply putting more rules in place, more guidelines in place, does not help. Putting the guidelines in place suggested by people who, put forward the grand jury investigations, that put forward, that have actively lied on council without accountability, those aren't the voices and those aren't the followers we should be listening to. What we should be doing is we should be looking to staff, we should be looking to the people in this city that have the responsibility for action, have the responsibility for reporting, have the responsibility for the actions. And we should make them do, hold people accountable. And once we see how people are being held accountable, how bad actors are being considered and taken care of, then, and if and only then, should we proceed with additional rules or additional committees? So I'm willing to hear, I'm willing to discuss this, more largely. I'm willing to discuss this even in public. But again, the chair stated, I mean, I state this all the time. What does an elected official know about anything? Like, we assume they know about a lot of things, but to be honest, I tell people this all the time. I'm not any smarter about municipal governance. I wasn't any smarter the day after I got elected from the day before I got elected. At some point, people care about things more or they don't. And they learn about them or they don't. They get a background or they don't. And when it comes to ethics, if there are no consequences, if there's no enforcement, if there's no accountability, then people will follow them or they won't. And executive staff knows this too, because they literally told me that they will not pursue certain things because they know some people will not follow the rules. Some people will not follow the laws. And this is a problem.
Okay. Yeah, Steve Manager.
Sure. A couple things. So, Maureen, as you know, we haven't talked a lot about your recommendations, and I was very clear that I didn't want anyone to think that I or staff had their thumb or were somehow guiding the recommendations that you received.
Yeah.
And so,
Not discuss this. Yeah.
I'm sort of saying that for the record, but I also have a question. Listening to some of the comments, what I understand from the committee is that there are a number of questions and they want you to come back
Yes.
with responses to those, as well as look at what smaller cities do. Totally understand all that.
Yes.
In the work you've already done, have you seen any cities that utilize either a third party or a more professional approach, right? I was looking at your cons of an ethics commission. And I think the word was like politicized and, lack of independence. And I've heard that from the committee. And so what that makes me think, right, is there a way to more professionalize this?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things, if you have a body, if they're appointed, they could, sway to one side or the other.
Right.
If they're, almost no matter how they're configured, right? I think the truth of the matter is Santa Clara and other cities has a very polarized political climate, right? And so is there a way to have a more professional lies approach? And so the question is, are there cities that have done that? And I know the Markula Center has been mentioned and we used them before. I did hear that they now have new staff over there. And so, are there centers like that? That's a local one, but are there other groups like that we could look to that could be the city's ethics consultant, ethics entity, investigator?
Mm-hmm.
But I think address some of the cons that you mentioned, address some of the comments about politicalization and and then the challenges of, right, how are they appointed, right?
Yep.
So
I can happy to look into that as well.
City Attorney.
Yeah, if I might add to that too. I'm hearing a lot of questions asked, right? And coming back with answers to that. I'm hearing also, which was a comment I was going to suggest, what, for lack of a better term, and I think it's the right term, what professionalized versions, right, of this type of oversight, exist, or might be applied. If in fact there's not, because of all the pros, cons, a full-blown ethics, commission, that might not be the approach that this city decides to take. I agree, but have not studied it completely with Maureen, that I don't think a lot of smaller cities have ethics commissions. As I think I've mentioned before, City of Chula Vista had one. They had a board of ethics. I wasn't the architect of it, but I did preside over it for my 13 years, of tenure down there. We did make some improvements to it. If the commission's interested, I could be part of the next presentation if you're hearing about how things work, because a lot of the issues that you've raised are ones that were grappled with down there, and there are things that you can do to manage that. they're imperfect. There's good things about, how that commissions work. There's bad things about it. And so if you're interested in a kind of a frontline experience with a smaller city's version of that, I'd be happy to work with Maureen and come up with it. And for the same reasons that Javon, I've been on the sidelines, of this too, not wanting to influence what, the professional outside assessment and recommendation might be, but it might be valuable to you to hear about, one of these that's worked in a smaller place. The good, bad, the otherwise with that. So I'd be happy to do that if that's in the interest of the committee.
Let me comment on that first. I would love to see that. Would it be possible to get a commissioner from one of these other cities that you did discuss? I don't expect that city attorney would be biased in this respect, but to avoid any, biases, could we just get one of these other cities like Sacramento or something to come and speak to us?
No harm in asking. Alternatively, I could try and reach out and speak to them and then report on that if, someone is not willing to come to a meeting, but yeah, we can certainly ask if that's
Okay.
the desire of the committee.
I would certainly like to hear the experience that a city attorney had in Chula Vista. First, we have Member Park.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I hear what the city attorney is saying, but I'll also say you're not addressing my explicit complaints about what's happening in this city. And at some point, if we're not talking about the censure and existing matters, if we're not talking about enforcements of ordinances and policies we already have, and how things are being sidelined, if we're looking at, how the charter enables and does not enable, without looking at fairness, we're trying to apply rules, asymmetrically, then I'm going to say I really don't have any opinion as to what the involvement of executive staff is, because I don't care about the reports if the actions cannot support what I'd like to see in a report. If we're going to have somebody that talks about experience on an ethics commission, I'd also like to spend additional resources on hearing from somebody who said it doesn't see, can tell you why a city like this doesn't need an ethics commission and what other recommendations we could have outside of an ethics commission that will improve transparency here. Like I agree that we don't expect people who follow the law to do bad things, but I also realize through the years that the law is, again, the lowest bar. And the laws don't change things such as people's actions. And again, we've got rules and ordinance already that people do not follow. And if we cannot, and we show council and the public that we are not willing to enforce the ordinances and policies that we already have, then again, simply putting more ordinances and policies, putting more committees and other things together, if we can't show the independence, if we can't show that there's accountability, not just of the people that are investigated, but also of the investigative body, then I think this is a very dangerous thing. I would like to see something that does not take us to an ethics commission, but something that takes us to transparency, whether the vehicle that takes us there is a committee or a commission or not. And we're not looking at those things. And the first thing that would, convince me that we are a city that's committed to this is, let's look at the infractions, let's look at the complaints, let's look at the things that are already on the table. Let's have an open and honest discussion about the civil grand jury reports and investigations that brought us here today. Let's take an open and honest look at those. And if we're not going to do that, then at some point, it doesn't matter what we implement, because the implement will not give us the outcome that we're looking for. Just like providing micro units will not ensure that every unhoused person has a home. We are conflating a lot of things because we do not understand the situation on the ground. We do not understand things that are not logical, or, we have not learned that there are so many shades of gray. In fact, there's not just shades of gray, there are trillions of colors, even things that we cannot see. And as long as we are being molded and guided towards one direction, this is a very dangerous process.
Okay, so, member
I'll make a motion.
I'd like to see some sort of concrete recommendation.
I'd like a
Yeah,
motion
Yeah.
that I think is, I'd like to have the city, whether it's through contract to the people that we come back with additional information, whether it's in person or whether through its reports. I personally would provide would prefer having people that we can ask questions to, that we can because you can't question a report. If you see something in the report, you can't correct that. But I would like to see that for the benefits of having an ethics committee and a commission, and for somebody or a group that understands, well, the problem is not about ethics commissions or committees. It could be about other things. I would like to see some investigation of what we can do outside of simply putting together an ethics commission or committee. Right. And I would like to hear a lot more, not just of what the process is. I don't care about size. I don't care about how it's appointed. I don't care about these things. I would like to hear about the underlying. How do we make the people on committees, if there are, how do we make people on staff? How do we make executive staff accountable to ordinances, policies? How do we ensure that things already get done? But again, there's so many things here. I would like to see those reports.
Member Park,
Yeah.
you would drive Nora crazy with that motion. Can you
I'm going to say at some point,
make your motion more concise?
things should be as simple as they need to be and no simpler. And at some point, I think that all the things that I talked about, because I have learned from this executive committee that if the ideas are not contained within the motion, then they can be ignored or dropped. Because I've learned that from this executive staff, I want to keep that motion as is.
I cannot understand.
I'm not asking you to. I am saying that I would like to see these things in another report.
I'm not going to second it.
Have a second.
Can you same point though? Can you repeat that
Okay, let me write this down.
in an AI summary?
So we are asking for another report. Right? And in that report, I would like to see input from, and if we can in person, somebody who has been on an ethics or somebody who is on an ethics committee or commission. I would like to also see kind of all sides. Doesn't have to be one other person. It could be there are several other ways. An expert who can discuss other ways beyond a commission or committee to address transparency and ethics. I would like a report on how city staff is addressing existing these are voted on actions. These things have been voted on. They just haven't been set priority. Existing complaints and items that have been voted by council. Again, these are not ideas. These have been passed. We voted on them. They passed.
Well, when you say existing complaints, that could be from anybody.
That's the true, but very few.
Specific.
Let's stay with the ones that council has prioritized. They were on council agendas and
As
priorities.
long as that's in the motion.
I'm putting it in the motion.
Only that.
Sure, sure.
Can I ask for point of clarification? I'm not sure exactly what council member or committee member Park is referring to, but he and I have had prior discussions around actions that the council previously directed.
Which is why I think you do understand.
Well, one of which was censuring the mayor.
That's correct.
That was also on a council priority list, I believe 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago at this point. And then removed from that council priority list once council narrowed down their priorities. So it fell off, right? And so it is not currently a directive of staff. I think the council member's concern is the initial point when it was put on, not when it was taken off, right? Because if you were to ask me right now, a list of things that staff is working on related to investigations or things like that, that would not be on the list. And so that would purposely miss, I think, the one of the issues that I've heard the council member articulate. And what I hear the council member articulating is a disagreement or a displeasure with council taking that off the list.
So again, let me address that. Like, since you've been here, we've had two priority setting meetings. The last meeting was not actually a priority setting. We never talked about priority setting. It was a priority report. It was a status report. Prior to that, we had a meeting where we did not set priorities. We talked about things, we put things on, and then afterwards, there was no discussion about the priorities. And at some point, if you tell me it fell off because not enough people put things on, that was not a discussion. That was a decision by staff to say, this is where it should be.
Mr. Chair, if I might interrupt, I appreciate that this is a meaningful and important issue and that there are discussions that are ongoing about it. I don't see how it relates to this.
Well, I'll tell you how it relates.
And it's a much broader and more complicated issue than that. I think this item on the agenda is, and I've been pretty indulgent about a variety of different kind of comments and conversations about it. This item on the agenda relates to the pros and cons of forming an ethics commission, and introduced to this, I think, alternatives, right, to a full-blown, ethics commission. That's really the nature of the discussion. The idea of a perceived or actual failure of staff to follow through, on items isn't necessarily and probably not even at all an ethics issue. It's a question of, performance and professional relationships, instructions of government that I think is different. And so I'm not dismissing the grievance or the idea that that's important. And I think Member Park ties it to a certain extent to, well, we need to solve all these other things first if we're going to make other different rules. But I think that's a separate topic. And I would suggest that it would be very difficult and probably confusing to include a lot of that in a staff follow-up and discussion of the item that's on the agenda. So a separate referral, I think I'm just observing and recommending, and it's up to you. A separate referral could be made for that, but it'd be difficult to kind of have that be a part of the discussion that relates to the agenda item that's in front.
Okay, so let me make it very clear for the
Let's keep
thing,
this short.
which is, I do not want the next item to be about an ethics commission. I think that it is very leading to say, well, this is about recommendations regarding potential adoption of ethics commission and the approval of proposed changes. I think at some point it should be about what we're actually looking for, which is, let's actually talk about what we're trying to achieve, which is transparency, accountability, right? And when you tell me that, looking at past priorities is not relevant, it's about trust. We've had people in the public tell us it's about trust. That if we don't follow through on the items that we claim that we are trying to address, in this meeting with governance and ethics, then how can we, build trust even with the committee members? I mean, I've stated this multiple times. And when you try to divorce, our actions, our accountability, following through with items with ethical items with items that go against our behavioral standards, when you try to dismiss those and say they are not relevant to what should be not just potential adoption of ethics commission, but transparency and accountability and trust in the city, I find that
Okay, I'm gonna,
unappetizing. So I'll try this again,
yes.
which is I would like a report on transparency and accountability beyond simple adoption of
I could interrupt for a second.
an ethics commission.
I
Sure.
think what we determined today was we do not have enough information to vote on establishing an ethics commission.
Agreed.
So we are deferring a decision pending more information. Now, what we want to decide in a motion is what information do we need to take next steps?
Okay, like, again, I don't want the motion, I don't want the next item that we have to vote on to be recommendation regarding potential adoption of ethics commission. I think at some point we need a lot more information beyond that, simply putting a solution into, a specific solution into the next item.
So if I may suggest,
City manager.
So certainly we can reword how we bring it back to you. I'll say the Ethics Commission was there because part of the referral from the city council was based on the grand jury recommendation. I think a very simplistic way would be come back with recommendations for an ethics commission or alternatives to achieve transparency, accountability, et cetera. That could work. So I would proffer that.
Okay, we can actually state something like that without putting the words ethics commission in that motion as well.
I think I want to leave ethics commission in there because that's what the public has been asking. It's an option. We don't have to move forward on it. And eventually, if we took it to a vote of the public, it would be a charter review committee that would have extensive discussions about exactly what we want.
there can be 5 options, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like one option outside consultant, so it can be one of the 5 options.
And I might emphasize again, Mr. Chair, to your point, the referral was ethics commission. So to leave it out,
Yeah.
I think the thing that I'm hearing and staff's very supportive is, identifying alternatives, to that for everyone's consideration. So that I think we've all heard loud and clear.
Then I would state it, and I'll put the words ethics commission in there. Another report on transparency and accountability with input from ethics committee or commission, expert. I would like, and my preference is that be in person. Experts who can discuss other ways beyond committee to address transparency and ethics with options in addition to an ethics commission. But I'll leave my comments about staff and priorities out of that motion. I will
I'll second.
I'm sorry.
keep
Can
it at this.
you repeat that one more time so I can get it properly because
The next report on transparency and accountability with input from an ethics committee or commissioner, expert who can discuss, and not just one expert, but if there's, several different options and each of those options has their own expert, I can do that. Experts who can discuss other ways beyond commissioner committee to address transparency and ethics, with options in addition to an explicit ethics commission or committee. And if possible, I would like those experts to be in person.
You have a comment?
I have a suggestion, in that that the information that comes back also include the role of staff in each of those options. I think, certainly since I've been here and even comments made today, the role of staff is unclear, right? We've heard even today, council members have lied and staff has not done anything about that. Right. And so I think it's important to have a very, very clear understanding of what are the bounds and responsibilities of staff vis-a-vis council action. So I just would like that included explicitly.
So basically, role of all the stakeholders, including staff, including council, including our commissioners, basically, and the employee, basically. we include everybody in that.
Sure. That's why I think that censure motions for lying and things like that were what council members tried to do to direct staff, and then staff dropped them. But again,
Let's
Let's just focus on ending this meeting, Kevin. So I think we're just adding the role of staff.
I can repeat what I wrote.
Already. Gonna ask Amy to see if she was able to encapsulate what you were saying.
There's a portion I still don't have. I notated to watch the video back to get it properly because you spoke faster than I could type.
I can repeat.
Why don't you repeat it once more?
Okay, which is,
And then she will,
and send it if you're already written.
and she will check with the recording
Yeah.
because that's the truth.
and I will add, another report on transparent accountability with input from ethics committee or commissioner and other experts who can discuss ways beyond the commissioner committee to address transparency and ethics in person, if preferable, with options in addition to ethics commission, and also include role of staff in those recommendations.
Seconder?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're good. We'll take a vote now. All in favor? Aye.
Yes.
Opposed? Abstain? Passes unanimously. Okay. So, do we have a staff report?
So yes, we just wanted to provide you the dates for the 2026 calendar year. This committee does meet quarterly. It's generally the first Monday of the month. So we've included the dates on the agenda for the committee meetings. So we just wanted to provide that information.
I have a comment. So we've had a number of complaints that the governance and ethics committee has had a number of cancellations. I would like to minimize the number of cancellations. And in fact, with the backlog of materials that we have on, I would also suggest, I'm not a motion, but I'd like to suggest that we look at additional meetings for governance and ethics. Because there are so many items that I've got that we're never going to get through. We've got, things that have been brought to council from the governance ethics. I've been supremely unhappy with the way they've been brought to council. About wording, about, so many different things. But I would like to have time, and I would like to have meetings so that we can clear the backlog. I would like to discuss more items in governance and ethics. I would like to have fewer cancellations, and I'd like to see, discussions. And I will talk to the chair about the issues that I have. I would like to see these issues addressed.
You actually can't talk to the chair.
No, I can give you a list of my priorities.
Be a Brown Act violation. You have to go through staff.
Okay, then I'll give my staff, my list to staff. I was not going to talk to you about the items. I was simply going to show you the list of items that, I still have backlog.
Okay, very good. City manager, do you have a comment?
Of course, there's a bandwidth and a workload issue, right? And so if the committee desires additional meetings, we could certainly have that conversation. I was going to add at the end of this meeting that at whenever the next meeting is, I would like to bring a discussion about the council priority setting process to the governance committee. There has been a number of conversations both at this meeting and after the last governance about the process and the goals and the strategy for that meeting. So I think instead of staff working with the consultant to configure that meeting, we need to have a more global discussion with the governance committee and potentially subsequently the city council on what that meeting looks like. And so I'd like that to come to the next meeting if the committee is amendable.
I think that's a great idea. Okay, any reports, referrals? Okay, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
And as a souvenir, I have many. Thank you.
No. Vinegar. I have a vinaigrette.
No, will you log us off?
Oh, sorry. I heard sauce. I'm so sorry.
Wasn't gonna give me my sauce.
Oh, no.